This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guests only. The content here should not be taken as medical advice and is for informational purposes only. And because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Welcome to Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces, a podcast devoted to changing the way eating disorders and mental illness are viewed in our society. With your hosts, Jack and Linda Major and Ellen Bennett. Today's guest is Jason. Jason was born in South Korea in 1970, only 18 years after the end of the Korean War. When Jason was 5 years old, his parents moved their family to the United States. Starting a new life with Jason and his two younger sisters in a foreign country and culture was a struggle for their whole family, and Jason's father developed alcoholism. Throughout Jason's childhood, he experienced many of the challenges immigrants face when coming to the United States, including racism, anger, and separation. These experiences were both traumatic and deep-seated. Everything was chaotic and unpredictable. During this time, Jason discovered that he could control one thing, his grades. Jason learned quickly that feeling in control and achieving was a way to get recognition and the praise of parents, teachers, and peers alike. He had no control over his environment, as his dad's alcoholism dictated that the family move every 2 to 4 years. Jason never felt at home anywhere. He developed anxiety and depression at an early age, which was undiagnosed until he was 23. Jason developed a dependence on alcohol, endured broken relationships that have been devastating, experienced the painful death of loved ones, and has survived a traumatic automobile accident. He has explored many methods of healing, including physical, mental, psychological, and spiritual. He attributes his work in the 12 steps of AA, embracing spirituality, especially in Eckhart Tolle's teachings, and the teachings of ACIM, A Course in Miracles, to his continuing recovery of body, mind, and spirit. Jason helps others by sharing his journey and by being a supportive friend to others who struggle. He currently lives on the east coast of the U.S. with his cats Gigi and Muta.
Welcome, everyone. It's great to be with you again, and we are very excited for you to hear about Jason's story and his journey healing mind, body, and spirit. He will be with us momentarily, but first, I'd like to welcome the guy sitting next to me, my husband and soulmate, Jack Major, and our dear friend and fellow advocate, Ellen Bennett.
Welcome, everybody. It's great to be back with you once again, and thank you for joining us.
Welcome. It's always awesome to be at the table with Linda and Jack.
Well, to set the stage today, I'd like to read one of my grandmother's favorite prayers. And she always used to read this prayer when the road got rocky. And these words were framed and hung in her kitchen, where everyone gathered around her kitchen table with glasses of iced tea and pizzelle cookies. And we always shared troubles with my grandma. And the prayer is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This is actually a shortened version of the Serenity Prayer. My grandmother was a very wise woman, and Reinhold Niebuhr, who is credited with writing this prayer, was an extremely wise man. Would you guys agree?
Oh, yeah. As I read this, it's sometimes hard to accept the things you can't change, but you have to continue to try. Otherwise, nothing will change. So as somebody who's passionate about our eating disorder and mental illness changes that we're trying to achieve, that we wanted to achieve yesterday, it's hard to sometimes be patient, but you just have to have that wisdom to know the difference and keep fighting for that change. So.
This wisdom is so important for all of us. And as we go through our journey, it is often that we step back and say, oh, there are some things I will not understand, but acceptance helps us move through.
Absolutely. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jason. You heard his bio, and there was so much more to his riveting and tender story. He is honest, thoughtful, intelligent, sensitive, and kind beyond measure, and he openly shares his journey to help others dealing with anxiety, depression, grief, and alcoholism. And honestly, his journey has the potential to help anyone who listens, regardless of your challenges. Welcome, Jason.
It's a pleasure. It really is. It's the highlight of my day, actually.
Welcome. We're so excited to have you at our podcast and look forward to this conversation. To get us started, it's hard to imagine what it was like for you as a young child coming to this country. Will you share with us some of the memories, impressions that you had? Most of us have no idea what it's like to leave your home, your country, your culture and traditions behind and begin again. Help us understand some of the complexities you as a child and your family faced. It seems you were as we listen more to your story, that you were very empathetic to feelings of your other family members.
Well, the earliest memories I have, I was in Korea until about, I would say, almost 6. I think around 1976 is when we first immigrated here. My parents did. It was so different. It's very different. Back then, Korea was still a young, rebuilding country because of the war. Had been when I was born, it had only been 18 years since the war. So that's something I don't really think about too much, because when you're born, you're just kind of born, right? And this is what you got. But when you come to a new country and all the roads are paved, everyone has an automobile, and everybody has these separate houses. And I mean, they have those there too, but I guess as a child, you just kind of take it all in. You're not really, you trust your parents completely. And so as a child, I didn't really think about whether this is a good move or a bad move. You know, at that age, I just had no opinion about it. But when I came here, the first memory was of the wheat fields from the airport to my aunt and uncle's house. There was just wheat fields. This was Kansas City, Missouri. And I just saw all this wheat and just open space. And then we got to the car, and I remember even the first thing that came out of the television set was my cousin John had been playing Space Ghost. You know, I don't know if you guys remember that, like Space Ghost. So these are these things I've never forgot because they were first impressions. Mm-hmm. But as a child, it went from me being, I felt like I went from, looking back now, of course, I felt that I was in an environment, I was kind of taken from an environment where I was comfortable. My parents were comfortable. They knew how the system worked, how things worked in that country. And then to come to another country where you don't even know the language very well, you don't have any marketable skills because of the language problem. And they were both teachers, school teachers there. So it's a little shocking, but there was safety in numbers then because we had a household of 10 because we were staying with my aunt and uncle, and they had 2 kids, my cousins, John and Greg. And then there were the 6 of us. My grandmother was there first, a year before us. And then, so there was safety in numbers. So it was helpful. It was helpful to have a little bit of family here to help us assimilate into this culture.
How big was that house for the 10 of you? Do you remember?
I would say, just ballpark estimate, I would say about 20 200 square feet.
Huh?
2,200 square feet.
Not a
Oh, okay. 22.
not a big house.
Yeah.
There were 3 bedrooms. And the kids shared one room. I shared one room with my grandmother and my 2 sisters.
Okay.
And my grandmother was always at home.
So you found that being an overachiever, getting good grades, and that got you noticed and got you praised by your family and probably the teachers and everybody, and probably became, part of your persona because those accolades helped you feel good. So did you, in your moving so frequently and the tensions in your home, have similar effect on your siblings? And were you close to your siblings when you were growing up?
Yes, we were very close. In fact, we had to be because we did not speak English when we first got here. I was just dropped off in kindergarten with no language skills whatsoever.
Wow.
And so I can remember the first words that came out of my mouth in kindergarten. And then my friend Greg was so shocked. He raised his hand. He said, "Mrs. Kenchelo, Jason said something in English." And it was a simple, "Can I borrow your crayon, your blue crayon or something?"
Mm.
So these are just like little memories that I have that are, I don't know, fresh. I wasn't jaded. I didn't have all this baggage I've accumulated over the decades, and all the conditioning that we get from our society and our culture and education.
You were just young and innocent and just
He rolled with things pretty well.
Day to day, and you did it. You did it well. Yeah.
Well, at some point, the achieving and the praise stopped working for you. I'd like you to tell us when that was. And I assume that's when things began to spiral downward. Can you tell us about that time and what happened as you sunk deeper into depression and how profound grief and physical pain became a heavy part of what you carry with you?
Yes. One of the difficulties growing up was my father was a functioning alcoholic, and he was supported by my mother. They didn't really have 12-step meetings in Korea. Even to this day, I don't know how many people go to 12-step meetings for recovery. But anyway, growing up with a dad who is impulsive, literally moving the whole family from one location to another every 3 or 4 years, it was difficult. There was no stability. My parents couldn't even understand the news. And then once by first grade, my English was better than theirs because I was completely immersed in school. So I lost that sense of safety that I had before when we were in Korea, because they were teachers, and teachers in Korea are treated very well. They're paid very well, and you have to be highly qualified. And so they made good money, and we built a house. My dad built the house once I was born, and that's the house that I remember. So, and then going back to the, could you rephrase the question,
Yeah,
Jack?
no,
I got a little.
That's okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Did your father's alcoholism start in this country or back in Korea?
It was in Korea. Alcoholism is fairly unchecked in Asia still. And many, many people die of alcoholism, and it's all swept under the rug. They don't mention it. They don't talk about it. It's a very closed, private culture, ancient culture, but it still has all the same man-made structures in society.
Yeah.
There was probably a lot of shame, right? Shame. So nothing was talked about because there was a lot of shame and
Yeah, I think in a culture, I mean, back in the 70s, even in this country, I believe going to a therapist was looked at upon as oh, are you mentally ill? You didn't want that stigma. But now we realize almost everyone has some form of mental illness. We just didn't recognize it and we didn't know much about it. And we're still learning a lot. So his recovery he never recovered, actually. My mother was kind of enabling him by trying to control his drinking. And I remember taking his sake wine bottle, pouring half of it out and pouring a water in there to lower the alcohol content because I did not want him to drink at night because he was not available for me as a father.
So the question was, when things started to spiral downward and you sunk deeper into depression and experienced grief, profound grief, and physical pain became, part of what you carried with you. Do you want to talk about that time? Are you comfortable sharing a little bit about the depression and the grief and the pain?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to talk about this because it needs to be talked about. Because my mother was a school teacher, and when I was growing up, I remember she bought me a math book, a third grade math book she had found. And I essentially taught myself math in third grade and second grade, starting in second grade. And so I was a little ahead before the teacher came out with this is the new lesson. Somehow I was just this weird kid that would go home off the bus. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. I had friends through my cousins, but when you're a kid, you go home and there's not a lot of noise in the head when you're a kid. It's a little bit quieter. And I just did the workbook daily after school. And so she encouraged that kind of discipline and a lot of structure, piano lessons, Boy Scouts, gymnastics, soccer, violin lessons. It was too much. She didn't ask us if we wanted to do it. And then we went back to so going to college, all of a sudden, my whole identity was based upon my grades. If I was terrified of getting even a B in college.
Wow.
I wasn't happy. And I was trying to project myself as a happy or confident person by getting good grades and acting arrogant and all that stuff in college. So it led to depression. I was a binge drinker in college. I would drink every weekend, and then the depression set in. But the depression already had started in high school. I was not happy. Too much pressure. Kids have a lot of pressure on them to do well on the SATs. You got to get your applications. You got to do your essay. You got to get good grades. There's a lot, and they don't get paid for it. So it's a lot of work. And so we're conditioned. And so because my happiness was very much dependent on my grades and my self-image and self-esteem was based on my grades, it wasn't holistic. It wasn't, so my depression started, really in high school. And then just gradually got worse in college. And my GPA went from a 4.0 down to a 3.45 over the 4 years. And I actually got my first C in college. So it was a release, but I was still guilt tripped by my mother when she gave me that evil eye about that C.
Was it your mother's mother or your father's mother that lived with you when you first came?
It was my father's mother. Yeah.
And did she?
My mother's mother.
Go ahead.
My mother's mother had died when she was around 8, and my father's father had died when he was 10. Okay. So they were both being raised by single parents, and then her father had gotten remarried, and she had a stepmother. What was the question again, Linda? Sorry.
So did that grandmother have, and calming, soothsaying influence on you at all? Or was it just more?
Yes. Oh my God. Absolutely. Just having her at home was a very stabilizing force. It was a very coming home. You knew someone was going to be there. She was always there. She was more like my mother because my mom was always working out of the house with my dad, 2 or 3. They were working 2 jobs each at one point. And so my grandmother pretty much raised us. So she was a stabilizing force.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Jason, this is an amazing conversation. And the more you talk about your younger years, there were a lot of complexities and a lot of things going on that played into, and on many levels, understandably so. There were a lot of pressures happening. But at some point, you realized that you were something could change and you could heal body, mind, and spirit. And can you share a little bit about that? Maybe what came up to that point and then what might have started you towards a healing path?
For me, it was, I knew it first I thought it was depression. I was so depressed all the time in college. I could barely function at one point. I was taking ibuprofen because of the headache that you get with depression. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's not going to work. It doesn't work for that kind of pain. So I just was desperate, and I looked up and I thought it was a medicine I was taking for acne, which was a prescription causing me the depression. Looked in the phone book. First thing I saw was a clinic, therapy clinic, and I called them and talked to her a little bit. And she said, "Well, you're at Trinity University. Well, you can get free counseling there." And she was very kind, and she sent me there. That was my first experience with counseling. And it was only one time in college with that guy. And that somehow allowed me to continue and finish my second semester of junior year without having to drop out for mental illness. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's been
that took a lot of courage. Courage to do that. And you're
I was
right.
desperate.
Yeah.
It takes a desperation. You need that desperation. I've learned a lot from Eckhart Tolle, I really truly believe that book was sent to me, The Power of Now. Mm-hmm. It was sent to me. I did not seek it out. I did not go to a bookstore on Amazon looking for it. It was on my girlfriend's shelf at that time. And I looked at it, I go, I've heard of this book. Have you read this? She said, no, my ex-boyfriend left it here. He really wanted me to read it, but, he just left it here. She said, you can have it. I said, okay. So I read a few pages and it just blew my mind. Because I think illness and mental illness, a lot of it is just a regurgitation of the past over and over in my mind, and then projecting those past experiences into the future. So I can't function now. I'm in constant anxiety because my body believes that it's real. Mm-hmm. The body's dumb. So if my emotions and my thinking is telling me there's danger or potential danger or something bad could happen, it's going to stress me out. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to be able to function very well. And I always look forward to that beer in the evening for relief. And eventually it just escalated. So I didn't really, it started with Eckhart in 2012 when that book came out. When I found that book, or it came to me, started reading it, then I got his audiobook, started listening to it. And that's how I discovered my current spiritual practice, which is A Course in Miracles, because he mentions it in that book a few times and I had never heard of it. And then AA I was introduced to when I arrived in Raleigh after graduate school. And I had just gone through a breakup. I was extremely depressed. I was using alcohol to manage my emotions, which of course is a spiral. And that's why it's so dangerous, because it grabs your mind, and it's an addiction. It's a craving that it's almost impossible to fight by human will alone. And so I sought out help, but I didn't find AA until several years after college. In 1999, I graduated in 93 and went to graduate school till 98. And then in 98, I came here, hit bottom, because I was just drinking and miserable and depressed and lonely and anxious, all of that. I felt suicidal, but I didn't want to die. Mm-hmm. I understood what that felt like. I understood the emotional pain, that intense pain that is invisible. And so AA was the first. AA was sent to me. I didn't even seek out AA. I actually was hitchhiking once in Seattle because I got lost somewhere after a snowstorm, after a drinking binge. And then the only people who were out on the road, all the buses had stopped running. There was 3 feet of snow. There was a small, old Subaru, and they gave me a lift. They said, "We're going halfway up to Seattle. We can drop you off there. You can find another ride." They took me to an AA meeting.
Wow.
Those were angels in that Subaru.
You can't write this stuff.
It's all in retrospect. Yeah, yes. It's all in retrospect.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's always in retrospect. But now I don't ignore those signs. Mm-mm. I can recognize them as true signs or my own ego-generated signs. Okay, so there's a difference. And it all has to do with, how does it make you feel? Is this guidance or your thought about what you should do? Is it come with hesitation, frustration, fear? Or does it come with warmth and joy and purpose? Happiness is our true purpose here. That's really the core essence of all spiritual realizations in this world, but it's been bastardized over hundreds of years and added.
We're wired for happiness. I do believe that. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
It's just all the ego and material things and cultural, societal things have an impact on us, and it just changes that innocence that we have when we come here as new souls, right? As children, and it just all starts to change, and that's unfortunate.
So, Jason, I know
go ahead.
I know you've talked about your depression and your physical pain, and I know, if you're comfortable enough, there was some really profound grief that happened in your life that.
Yes. It all happened, it seemed, at once. So I hit a really hard bottom again, because I was in AA, but I had 11 years and relapsed after almost 11 years, because I had stopped doing the things like going to meetings regularly, having a home group, doing all the suggestions, having a sponsor, being of service. And I thought, maybe I'm not an alcoholic. It'd been almost 11 years. Mm-hmm. And one time I went to, we went to a business meeting and I relapsed. And then it took another, what was that? It took another 8 years before I could really feel like I have true recovery. But it's been a two steps forward, one step back for me, always. It's never been a continuous improvement curve, you know what I mean? Where you're just getting better every day. No, it's sometimes you get better, and then sometimes you take a step back and look at it as not as failure or have any guilt associated, but look at it as an error. What is the error that can be corrected here? That's the main reason I have to look at the past, is to look at my reactions and my thoughts and patterns and what happened. Did it solve anything? Did it make anything better? Did it make me any happier or more satisfied in this world?
Mm-hmm.
And really the only answer I found is in spirituality. And science and spirituality, both. They seem to merge now. So I just want everybody to know that there's a whole new way to look at this world and to see it differently. And you can ask yourself, should I look at it differently? Well, then just ask yourself, do you like what you see in your own mind of your past and future? And this blew my mind. This Eckhart Tolle, the present moment is the power of now. It blew my mind. And I really got into it. And I started listening to him every day. And it just opened up my heart. And it led me to Course in Miracles, led me to you, Linda and Jack.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Through Seema Kaneja, Dr. Seema Kaneja, who is an amazing doctor and spiritual counselor.
She sure is.
And my therapist, Brittany Shawley in Canada and near Toronto is my current therapist. And she's also a spiritual psychotherapist. And this is the new science of therapy is integrating the spiritual truth that has been with us all this time into healing, because that's what it's for.
And healing has become so non-spiritual. And it's wonderful to see people realizing that we are not just bodies. We are mind, body, and spirit. And I think that medical professionals that we relate to the best are the people that touch our spirit, right?
Yes.
People who can see through the shell of our sickness.
Mm-hmm. But I just realized I didn't address the question.
That's okay.
I actually, one of the things that happens with me is I struggle with sleep because of chronic pain. And what happened to me was after the relapse, my daughter cut me off in 2018, I believe. And I had very little contact since then. And it was so traumatic for me. We went, long story short, we're just not communicating at all anymore. So that was a loss. It was almost like worse than a death in some ways, because it's like, she's right there, but I can't talk to her. I can't see her. I can't even communicate. I don't even know what's going on over there. And it's just so hurtful, when a child does that. But I'm able to look at it now differently through the mind training and the psychotherapy, spiritual psychotherapy. And so that soon thereafter, I got in a car accident with my Honda Accord. I slammed into the front bumper of a FedEx truck, and I braced myself instead of using the airbag, and it trapped all this traumatic energy into my body. And that caused me to relapse again due to the extreme pain. And I can handle extreme pain, but not all day, not every day,
Mm-hmm.
It just becomes, you have to find a new way to live and function and do little chores, cleaning. It's been a tough last 3 years for everyone because of the pandemic and everything that's been happening, but it seems to be exactly what I needed to start this healing process, is have the gift of desperation. GOD in the 12-step program, it's an acronym, the gift of desperation. It's a gift. Use it. Don't just put it on the shelf. Use it. It's a gift.
So I know you share your apartment with a couple other friends.
Yes.
Your cats, Gigi and Muta, and they have to play a big part in helping you in your journey, your recovery, and your
absolutely
happiness.
Gosh, I cannot remember. Yeah, but Muta and Gigi, I went to the shelter when and found the two cats, and my daughter was 8 at the time, and I bought them for her. I got them for her for Christmas, but they stayed at my house and not my ex-wife's house, and they stayed with me for 11 years. They were indoor outdoor cats, and they were present. They were present. I was dysfunctional. I was making a lot of money, traveling, working, all the benefits of a corporate job, but I wasn't happy. And I was on the road and I would drink and I still haven't been able to make contact with her, but I'm not suffering anymore. I did suffer. And I do miss her, of course, but I see it differently. And that's what my spiritual practice teaches, is how to see things differently. But you have to want it.
Can you explain a little bit about A Course in Miracles? I'm sure some people have no idea what it is. And I mean, it is those things and more, but you're very qualified to explain it, Jason.
I appreciate that. I've really had to devote my life to this because of my physical condition. There's a lot of fear associated with that. So I pretty much had to give up everything, hitting that bottom, my career, my contact with my daughter, everything, and just focus on this. So lack of sleep has really affected me, Linda. Point me back in the right direction.
Just tell us about A Course in Miracles, just like A Course in Miracles, an overview. Yeah.
Just a quick overview,
so people can.
Yes. It's a beautiful path or a journey where you are able to. It is the most modern, most current manifestation of a book or a teaching in form, and I've done a lot of investigations into it. Eckhart talks about it all the time. It is one of the most profound literature in the 20th century ever. And it is a mind training program. It has daily lessons you can simply follow. And if you do that, you will feel some turbulence, because your perception of your thoughts even will change, and your perception of the past will change. It's hard to explain, but it is divinely inspired by the one who is known as Jesus, who channeled it through Helen Schuckman in 1967, and they wrote the book over a period of 6 years. It was published in 1975, I believe. And I only noticed it because it kept coming up in The Power of Now. So I Googled it. And that's how I found David Hoffmeister, Living Miracles. And oh my God, this is amazing stuff. What is he saying? Is he being serious here? It's a new way to look at the world. And it's a fresher way to look at the world. It's a happier way to look at the world. And it's all about healing together, not just me. One of the principles is all that I give is given to me. Mm-hmm. So the more I give, the more joy I get. I'm being less self-centered and being other-centered. But what I learn is when I help others, I'm really just helping myself.
You put that beautifully.
Yeah, I think that is wonderful.
It is really wonderful how you've pulled together and used different resources to say, I have to look at things differently. I have to. And I think all of us, through whatever journey has been through, realize that we had to reflect and look at things from a much broader perspective. And how did we get here, and how are we going to go forward, and how can we do that positively and renew our spirit, heal our body, heal our mind, renew our spirit. And you've pulled so many touch points together to really help people reflect. And the underlying thing I'm observing is you need support, you need help. It's difficult to do it alone. And I just wonder if you have anything to add to those thoughts.
Yes. The Buddha taught that you could travel the entire globe and not meet anyone that is more deserving of love and compassion than yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Be kind to yourself. Watch your thoughts. Don't be your thoughts. Don't be the thinker. Be the watcher of the thinking. And when you can do that, you start to realize that, oh my God, I've been watching a movie on rerun over and over my entire life. And it's not a fun story. I don't even want to watch it again. But it's just auto-generated, and I'm not conscious that I'm actually spinning the wheel, keeping it going. You got to get to a point where you're desperate enough to go, okay, this is it. It's either I got to find a solution, or I'm just going to die in pain and misery and sadness. And you cannot, so as David Hoffmeister likes to say, you can't get to heaven unless you're happy. You know, you can't get to heaven unless you become like little children. You know, that is the state of mind that the Course teaches and Eckhart teaches and all these spiritualities teach. But the reason I like the Course is because it gets very heavy into the metaphysics, which I love because I'm a science trained individual. I know a little bit of quantum physics, and it matches. It aligns with even the language, collapsing time. That is an amazing phenomenon, that time can make us suffer, the idea of time.
Well, and metaphysically, all time is happening at the same time. The time construct is an earthly thing, right? So, that's hard when you're suffering to wrap your head around that, but there's something to that for sure.
But the lessons in the Course are a refuge. Whatever's going on in my life, if I can't think of anything else to do, I go into the lesson, I read it, I pray and meditate. I listen to David read it because he's got the whole thing on YouTube. He's got it all broken up into daily, lesson 1, lesson 2, all the way to lesson 365. Mm-hmm. It's all free. You just got to do it.
Right. And I
gotta want it.
I think part of the journey in going back to the serenity prayer is the wisdom to know when to let go sometimes, and
yes,
when to.
We can't change the past,
right?
But we can change our perspective of the past,
our
perception of the past.
We're very good at beating ourselves up, right? But if you can come out the other side, you come out a better person. You come out more empathetic. You become more understanding. You become just better all around because you endured something tough, and you're sharing your story like you're doing helps so many other people, regardless of what they're struggling with. And that's a gift that you give back, for sure.
That's right. And even in recovery, you got now refuge recovery, which is for everyone. Even if you're an overeater, you can go there. If you're an alcoholic, you can go there. It's a community of healing, and we support each other.
We're all about pure connection and community support, because I really do believe that the AA model stood the test of time and is amazing, and we are better together. And it's just a place where you can come together and share. And we're all about that for no matter what you're struggling with.
Just to let you know you're not alone. There's everybody out there suffering, just like you are. So
it's not even about being alone, feeling alone with because I'm not around other people. Now the loneliness is that the perception of separation, and being separate from others. One of the weirdest teachings in the Course in Miracles is in one of the first chapters. It says the strangest belief that humans have, or that you have on earth, is that you can lose the one that you love. Now, that cannot be understood exactly from our perspective, but the Course gently unwinds a tightly wound up, tangled mind, loosens it so that the light comes in for the healing. But you got to take, it's a very, the science of it is, the science has to catch up with this. It will take maybe another 20, 30 years, 40 years, but it's going to happen because it's already happened.
Wow. Can't be separated from love. Love
We're not separate.
Love stays
you,
always.
Ellen, Jack,
right?
Yeah, Ellen, Jack, and Linda. You guys are all doing exactly what you need to do for your healing. Mm-hmm. Jack and Linda wrote a book to help others who are suffering, empathetic to others, understanding. It's better to understand than to be understood, as St. Francis says in his prayer.
Oh, it's one of my
better
favorites.
Better to give.
Yeah.
Yeah, better to give than to receive.
Mm-hmm.
Better to love than to be loved. Because when you love, you are loved.
Right.
There's no separation. This whole idea of this and that, opposites, the Course and non-duality, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of that, Zen, Taoism, brings it all together. And you see the truth in it, that this idea of duality is causing our suffering. This idea of separation is causing our suffering. It doesn't matter why you're suffering. Mm-hmm. It could be a death of a child, which is probably the worst thing you could possibly go through in life. You know, that's, even Eckhart says that one of the most traumatic things that he's had to do, help people with, is the loss of a child. He doesn't do one-on-one counseling anymore, obviously. You'd be overloaded. There are therapists out there who can help you with this. And I just want to mention two. Living Miracles, I was sent Seema. Seema actually sent me a message while I was in the first free retreat. And then I met with Seema several months later. This was like 6 months later. And I had a few counseling sessions with her. And then she started this event, spiritual healing 3-month thing that Jack, Linda, and I were all in. And I was matched up with Jack and Linda as study buddies, or I forgot what we called it back then, but we were buddies, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And we help each other, and we were able to stay connected. We're getting more and more frequent now, but even after many months of not talking to them, I don't feel separate from them. I feel like they're my family. You guys are my family.
Oh, I feel the same way.
We feel the same. Yep.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Well, it's probably time to start getting ready to wind down. Is there anything that, Jason is going to have there's a couple links at the end of the show notes for A Course in Miracles and Dr. Seema Kaneja. And the other one is your
Brittany Shawley.
Shawley, yes. So
yeah,
those are both in there. Is there anything, Ellen or Jack, that you want to ask Jason before?
I just want to thank you for this beautiful, inspirational message of healing and giving people hope, and that it is so possible, and acknowledging that, sometimes you step back, but there's always a forward path. And there are lots of resources out there. And it's just a beautiful message today. Thank you so much. You're so inspiring and truly reminding us that the Spirit is so essential to who we are and our being. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Jack. Thanks, Linda. Yes, actually, in truth, we are spirit. Mm-hmm. The body is anyway, we don't have time to get into that, but that's why it's so important. Mm-hmm. That's why it's so important.
Yeah. Well, Jason,
get to know who you really are.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to have met you, and I'm so glad that Seema put us together in that group together.
No coincidences.
No coincidences. And she is, we see her frequently now that she's moved to Rochester with her parents, and She was part of our event the other day, so she is truly a special friend and
Spiritual teacher.
yeah, as are you. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
I love you guys.
Love you too. Is there anything else that you want to say before we sign off? This has gone by so fast.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is I am responsible for my state of mind, my own state of mind. I am responsible for my own state of mind. It's not anything anybody else did to me. I am responsible for my own happiness. And you are the happiness that you seek, as Rupert Spira so wisely put.
That's great. Thank you. Well, thank you, Jason. This has been wonderful. Thank you, Alan and Jack. And thank you, Rockbox Recording and Production and Sound Engineer Scott Fitzgerald, for expertly producing our podcast and so much more.
And remember, rate, review, share, and share some more. And subscribe to Once Shattered on the platform you are listening to us on. Thank you, thank you.
And for all of you out there, remember, if you need to record your podcast, record your audiobook, or do a legacy cast for loved ones, which would be a great Christmas gift, remember Rockbox is the place to record those. And thank you again, everyone, for listening.